Now, of course, he didn't know what a kitchen was. He only knew it all looked very strange. Climbing carefully down the leg of the chair, he was very good at climbing, he saw a little hole. Quickly he ran across the floor and into that little hole just before a big yellow thing jumped at him. Emily's bedroom. Mrs. Buffington called to the children. "Ben, Emily, you left the lunchbox sitting on the chair. Come and clean it out, put it away, and set the table for supper." The children obediently ran into the kitchen. Bumping into each other, they almost knocked the lunchbox onto the floor. It's a good thing Alf had found his way out. After supper, the little family came together for scriptures and prayers. Giving hugs and kisses, Mr. and Mrs. Buffington sent the children off to their beds. Little Alf looked around the hole he was hiding in. He had very good eyes and could see very well in the dark. He wondered if it was a rabbit hole. No, it was not that big, but it seemed to be very long. He carefully walked and walked and walked until he came to a bigger opening. The inside of this hole looked more like a little room. Of course, there was nothing in it but a little moldy cheese left by the last occupant, who had obviously moved away. Now the little elf was also very tired and lay down on the floor of his little room to sleep. Just as his eyes were beginning to close, he heard a noise. Then he heard a voice call, "Good night, Ben." A light came on and was shining through the opening of his hole. Little Elf hardly dared to move. Quietly he crawled over to the hole opening, peeking out just as the light went off. He could see a very big girl climbing onto a very big bed. Remember, Little Elf could see very well in the dark. Elf was a little frightened. Everything was so new and strange. He wished he was home in his own little bed. But right now he was too tired to worry and wonder any more. So he settled back into his hole and went to sleep. The dollhouse. Morning came to the redwoods and the little house by the woods. Strange noises woke up Little Elf. He peeked out of his hole. He was amazed at seeing the big girl he had seen last night playing with a doll as big as he was. By the bed sat a beautiful little house. What a nice house, he thought. Mrs. Buffington called, "Ben, Emily, come and get your breakfast. We're going to town soon. Be sure to make your beds and say your prayers before you leave your rooms." After a while it became very quiet in the house. Little Elf carefully slipped through the hole and stood looking at the little house he had seen the big girl play with. He started walking through the beautiful little house, getting more and more excited. What a nice chair! What a nice rug! Oh, what a nice bed! I wonder if that bed would fit through my hole. Little Elf pulled and pushed until he finally got the bed through the opening of the hole. He was so happy. He jumped on the bed. He rolled on the bed. He curled up and took a nap on the bed. Little Elf had found that if he traveled back through the hole, he would come to a room where there was food. But there was also a very big creature called Cat. Cat was big and yellow. He had sharp teeth and long whiskers that seemed to move back and forth whenever Little Elf got too near him. He did not look too friendly. I'd better stay out of his way, thought Little Elf. Little Elf became very good at fooling Cat. He was tricky and fast. Getting food took up a good part of his day, but he found where the bread box was, and sometimes the children didn't clean up their peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They were Little Elf's favorite. Each night when it got quiet in the house, Little Elf took something from the dollhouse and dragged it into his little hole. He was getting quite comfortable in his new home. Discovery. "What happened to my doll furniture?" cried Emily. Ben, did you take my doll furniture?" Ben let Emily know he didn't take her doll furniture. "What would I want with doll furniture?" he said. "Hey," said Ben, "this is a mystery. We have to solve it." "I think it's Cat," said Ben. Plans were made for Emily to go to bed that night, but to keep a flashlight by her side to catch the thief. "But I'm scared. What if the thief is big and not Cat?" "Don't worry. I will run right in when you call me," Ben said bravely. That night Emily went to bed as usual. Well, almost as usual. She was really a teensy-weensy bit frightened. Just as Emily's eyes started to close, she heard a sound. Her heart started beating so fast. Was that her heart she was hearing? No, she could hear a tiny scraping sound. Quickly, she aimed her flashlight and pointed it at the small noise. Now, who do you suppose was more surprised, Elf or Emily? They both just stared at each other and didn't dare to move until Ben burst into the room. "Cool," he said. Little Elf's knees were shaking so hard he had to sit down on the chair he had been carrying to his hole.